I don't think I'll be able to do the whole show with these types of glasses on. One of the problems is because it really narrows down your particular vision. Although I think the effect is actually quite powerful. I guess it is a little creepy, though, because you go the whole time without blinking. So I can't just look down. I actually have to... they're quite effective, though. The skin tone doesn't match perfectly. It is for maybe just for a couple minutes. I'll leave them on. It is 4:03 p.m. Friday, September 19th, 2025. Mark Kulak, Houstonic.live. This is my thinking, my Inquisition look, I guess. So this show today is going to be a remake of the video that I did yesterday, Third of a Century Narrative Control. And this is time capsule show from the Show of Hands Live, mid-'80s Rush. Which, as old as it is actually not much older than some of the relationships that we're going to highlight here. I needed to redo the video that I did yesterday regarding Jimmy Kimmel because I was able to find a clip, thanks to Mrs. H, with a more complete capture of what Jimmy Kimmel said, the late-night comedian, which is the topic of this controversy right now, which many people are talking about, which I guess has given him a little bit of a short-term vacation, a little bit of a boot. He hasn't been canceled. Of course, there's a lot of other controversy right now that this is stirring up, as maybe his ratings were low and he's just doing this as a stunt to get more views. Or how is it possible that late-night comedian Jimmy Kimmel ever could have said anything controversial, because there's already so many people that review everything that he said, etc., etc., etc. But he said a few more things. And again, it's not the most outrageous thing anyone could say. And people are free to find it offensive. Some people should be mad. But either way, I happen to believe it falls within the envelope of free speech. And also, I think it's important to note that the date that this was captured. So let us just start, before I do some quick hellos, by playing that back. And here it is. It's on TikTok. Jimmy Kimmel. I think it's important to have, again, a more complete context of what it is he said and what it is he didn't say. So let's go back to the beginning here of this 1 minute and 15-second TikTok, which includes a couple of edits so that it fits within a 1 minute TikTok. But let's just let it play and see what Jimmy Kimmel said.
We had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
So I don't know if they've taken that out of context or not. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. The whole ballroom thing and them interviewing Trump. But more importantly, this must have been filmed earlier in this week or over the weekend. And it includes Jimmy Kimmel making a statement that the MAGA crowd, which is associated with being the conservative or the right, politically right crowd, although it's unfair because there's a lot of conservatives that didn't sign up for that type of association. Now, in fairness, at the time, over the weekend, or maybe it was early this past week, time flies, and a lot has happened, there was some evidence that regarding some information which had been come out, it could have been strategically leaked, I don't know, that the person who was accused and is currently being accused or prosecuted as the lone shooter had a family which has connections with law enforcement and gun ownership, and that the person who is currently arrested and accused of doing the assassination might have had a lot of practice and experience with guns, which is his constitutional right, and that many people in the accused family are Trump supporters. So when I saw that evidence, right or wrong, I shared that with you, saying that, I don't know what's going on here anymore. None of this seems to make any sense. It's funny because, well, none of this is really funny, but Jimmy Kimmel was definitely trying to use that for political points. And then he goes on to say that the conservative right, or the MAGA crowd, is then using the assassination of Charlie Kirk for political propaganda. So he's already being hypocritical there. And these are the statements which are among the top reasons why. It looks like Walt Disney, maybe. The fact that Walt Disney owned broadcaster, that is actually right there also a huge red flag. Because Walt Disney has an extensive history with Harvey Weinstein and Miramax, and therefore, well, Steve Bannon. I'm not sure I'm going to map out all of that today, but I wanted to capture that because I made the mistake in the version 1 of this show that the only thing that late-night comedian Jimmy Kimmel said that was of controversy was stating that the MAGA crowd was using this for political propaganda. Now, I'm going to say something that I'm sure you've not heard anywhere else yet. There was one thing that Jimmy Kimmel said in the middle that I'm sure people on the political left and the political right, and by the way, we're all Americans, okay? We're all Americans. Some people have different ideas about how to go about doing things politically and how to achieving certain goals. And there should be some disparity. There should be some disagreement so that we can hash ideas out and so on. But we're all Americans. Okay, we shouldn't want to kill each other just because we have some different ideas about how to do things. We're all Americans, but he said one thing that I'm sure nobody picked up on, which hits home for me.
Over the weekend, with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level,
it's the flag half-mast part. Did you know, of course you know if you watch my program, the United States is currently in the midst of its largest loss of life event in the history of the United States. The history of the United States. And that is the drug overdose epidemic in the United States. The numbers apparently are going up again. Back in the year 1998, 1999, 2000, the United States had 19,000 fatal drug overdoses per year. Per year. Per year. That's our baseline. Per year. Somehow that number crept up slowly to 50,000, then 60,000, then 70,000 during the Obama administration and during the first years of the Trump administration. Then it exploded to 90,000, then 115,000 and 118,000 during the pandemic. Somehow it went up almost sixfold. And it's not an accumulative number. That's per year. That means that 1 year in 2023, the United States has many fatal drug overdoses as 1995, 1996, 1997, 1998, 1999, and 2000 combined, and nobody said anything. This fatal drug overdose epidemic has taken well over 600,000 lives in 5 years, last 5 years. Basically, right now, 1 million lives total in the opioid epidemic, which goes back about 14 years right now, and is the leading and if perhaps the only main reason life expectancy for going down. And when you total up the number of people dead and the average age at which those people died, it is numerically the largest loss of life event in the history of the United States of America. And I bring this up because I know people who have lost 2 children who have been working with governors in the state, in the union, in the United States, as well as directly with the U.S. government. In fact, I know one of them has even met personally with President Trump, begging the United States on Overdose Awareness Day to have 1 day to lower the flag to half-mast. And you know what? The answer is always no, 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 no. 1 million deaths, no flag half-mast. None. Charlie Kirk dies. I've nothing against Charlie Kirk. I've never even mentioned his name until his death. Right or wrong, I never even mentioned his name. I have my own lane. It's a little different than his, okay? So I'm not supporting. I'm not criticizing. It's just he's doing something different. And the fact that he's dead, it's terrible. But it's one death versus a million. And Charlie Kirk dies. He doesn't even work for the government. I'm not saying it's not a tragedy. It's at levels. I'm not saying that people aren't moved. But understand, I know people that have lost 2 kids to overdoses. Both of them were also parents themselves and have been leading these efforts to try to raise awareness. We have 1 million dead, and almost no states will even lower the flag half-mast for even one afternoon. So Jimmy Kimmel obviously doesn't care about it either. He should have mentioned that. If he cares about life so much, he supposedly cares about the kids because he wants the childhood vaccines protected. And Trump doesn't do it either. Both of them have ignored it. And they are polarizing and dividing the entire nation based upon Charlie Kirk. Tragedy? Yes. Okay. And I understand that for people who know Charlie Kirk and is a bigger part of helping them, it is a more personal issue. I get it. I'm not making a comment on that. However, though, when that one assassination, death, trumps 1 million, people like myself go, what's going on here? Arguably, the flag should not have gone to half-mast for Charlie Kirk. I'm not saying that it wasn't a real assassination, and I'm not saying it wasn't a tragedy, but the base has already been set that 1 million dead from the drug epidemic is still not enough to get 1 day of a flag half-mast, even though tens of thousands of parents have directly communicated with the U.S. government, both Trump and Biden, and they haven't budged on it. And then immediately it goes to half-staff for Charlie Kirk. I'm sorry, but that is inappropriate. That is inappropriate. It would have been inappropriate to do it for George Floyd as well. Again, I understand all of the heated differences about that as well. Okay, but consider, taking aside how people may feel personally about these individual catastrophes, what doesn't get a flag at half-mast day? Consider that first. If you can't beat that hurdle, you shouldn't even be talking about it. So that's insane. So I wanted to put that out there. And the only loss of life event that, when adjusted for population at the time, has been worse than the fatal drug overdose epidemic in the United States over this last 10 or 14 years has been the United States Civil War. That's it. That is the only one that has been worse. And no one will talk about it, not even a day. State of Massachusetts, we finally got overdose awareness plates, OA plates, that you can get for an additional $50 as a vanity plate. And it was an enormous amount of work for that to have happened. Every possible obstacle was put in the way of making that happen. And it finally happened. All right? So this show here is not going to be about that specifically, but I wanted to highlight they're all dancing around it. And if anyone actually does want to come up with a really good reason to say, hey, maybe we should question exactly what the pandemic was and was not and revisit the necessary to have done emergency use authorizations, they can very simply call into question why life expectancy went down, why we had all of those excess deaths, the vastness, the significance, the substantialness of the fatal drug overdose epidemic, combined with hospital protocols, errant use of excess oxygen causing acquired respiratory distress syndrome, leading the people to the rest of the protocols, which killed them, as well as an expected rise in all-cause mortality because of an aging population, not to mention the possibility that there could have been placebos and hot batches. None of that gets any conversation whatsoever. Instead, it's just, medical rights, vaccine rights, etc. Okay, so this is about Jimmy Kimmel right now. Jimmy Kimmel, this is not his first rodeo, okay? And the fact
Friday,
that
the White House
Jimmy
flew the
Kimmel
flags
is a big part of this drama is why I wanted to spend another 10 or 15 minutes again, like I did yesterday, going over this very curious network. How many of you, looking at the chat, okay, how many of you have not a friend, okay, but a cluster of colleagues and coworkers that you have actively been working with and collaborating with for over 30 years? I mean, at least 30 years. So we're at closing in towards the end right now of 2025. This would mean that people that you have known since at least 1995 or earlier. How many of you in the chat, I'm going to look for yeses or nos, know people that you have, and I don't mean just like a friend, maybe someone that was on your street you grew up with, spouse isn't included, colleagues, coworkers that you have been collaborating with for 30 plus years. I have one friend from 30 plus years ago, a guy named Ed in Connecticut, who was the best man at my wedding. And I should spend more time talking with him. He's a great guy. I don't know why. No. Okay, Reginald's the first person to say no. Arthur says no. And that's not crazy. Okay, I think for most people, unless you're like in the Amish community or something similar to that in farming, Zip, nope. Reginald, Renee, no. Arthur, no. And that's okay. That's very typical for America. Most people don't know. Entropy, not me. Change jobs too many times. That's okay. That's normal. Maybe we should have more people that we work for 30 years. Maybe we would be happier. It's typical at the very least in America these days to not have people that you have been known, not just friends, but actively collaborating with and working with for 30 plus years. All right. So with that in mind as the baseline, okay, let's restart where we were yesterday. And I'm going to do yesterday's show as if we didn't do yesterday's show. I'm restarting it, okay, because I want it to be a little bit more condensed for a few specific people that are going to be listening to this and making some notes. Jimmy Kimmel, born 1967. What does that make him? 57 or so? 58. American television host, comedian, best known as the host, executive producer of the Jimmy Kimmel Live. Kimmel has hosted the Primetime Emmy Awards 3 times, Academy Awards 4 times, etc. He was also co-host of Comedy Central's The Man Show and Win Ben Stein's Money, and we're going to get to that in a moment. So let's skip over that. Look, already in his title, on the 3 paragraphs on Wikipedia that help define who Jimmy Kimmel is, 3rd paragraph, on September 17th, 2025, ABC News operation in the United States suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live, the late-night show, indefinitely after Kimmel's remarks regarding the MAGA movement's reaction to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, drew threats from FCC Chair Brendan Carr, and an announcement from station owner Nexstar. Oh my goodness, Nexstar. Wow, that's curious. And its ABC-affiliated stations were dropping the program for the foreseeable future. So it's not 100% canceled yet, but it's paused at the very least at the moment, okay? Early life and family. Jimmy Kimmel was born in Brooklyn, one of the 5 boroughs of New York City, and grew up in the neighborhood of Mill Basin. He is the eldest of 3 children of Joan and James John Kimmel. And his dad, James John Kimmel, worked at American Express and was an IBM executive. And by the way, IBM probably has several thousand executives. So being an executive at IBM, it's not like you're the CEO of Google, okay? Maybe he was high-ranking there, but there's a lot of executives at IBM. He was raised Catholic and as a child was an altar boy. Kimmel's mother is of Italian descent. Her grandparents migrated to the United States from Naples. His family surname, Kimmel, means caraway in German, goes back several generations. He obtained Italian citizenship in 2025. Family moved to Las Vegas from New York City when he was 9 years old. Graduated UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and went to Arizona. He has an uncle, etc. Was on Jimmy Kimmel Live, etc., etc. Career. Radio career. Inspired by David Letterman's start in radio, Jimmy Kimmel began working in radio while in high school. He was a host of a Sunday night interview show at University of Nevada, Las Vegas' College Station. And then while attending Arizona State University, he became a popular caller to a FM show. 1989, Jimmy Kimmel landed his first paying job alongside this Eric something Voss as a morning drive co-host over the next 10 months. Then he worked advertising contract with the Seattle Mariners. Now I'm going to stop skimming. A little bit more detail the next 2 or 3 paragraphs. In 1990, Jimmy Kimmel and Voss were fired by KZOK and were fired again a year later by a station in Tampa. Jimmy Kimmel went on to host his own show in Palm Springs, California, where he recruited as his intern Carson Daly, who had been a family friend since his childhood. Now, Carson Daly, for those who are watching this in the future, I can pop up the picture there. Carson Daly is an American television host from 1998 to 2003. He was a video journalist, video jockey on MTV's Total Request Live, TRL. So Carson Daly is a huge in the entertainment industry in the United States of America. So Jimmy Kimmel, childhood friend Carson Daly. That's cool. That's fine. So that's one relationship that goes back a long way, obviously. Fine. That isn't really what I'm focusing on right here, though. That's really not the heart of this meat and potato shepherd's pie. Now, so they go back to childhood. So after a morning stint in Tucson, Arizona radio station, then he went to Los Angeles. He spent 5 years as Jimmy the Sports Guy for this Kevin and Bean morning show, and during that time, he befriended comedian Adam Carolla. Adam Carolla, Carolla, there he is with the big, thick glasses. Interesting, another thick glasses guy, and the funny hair. Adam Carolla is an American radio personality, comedian, and producer, and he hosts the Adam Carolla Show, which I know most people don't watch, but it has been on a long time. And a talk show distributed as a podcast. Adam Carolla co-hosted the syndicated radio call-in program Loveline with Drew Pinsky. That's right, Dr. Drew. From 1999 to 2005, as well as the show's television incarnation on MTV. From 1996 to 2000. So Dr. Drew, Adam Carolla, also MTV, like Carson Daly. Matter of fact, this is addition to yesterday. So it is now 2025. So since 30 years ago, Adam Carolla, of this show, Dr. Drew, and Dr. Drew is very active on Rumble right now. Matter of fact, I shook his hands as some sort of, addiction counselor at one of the most recent Brownstone events. Dr. Drew Pinsky, Dr. Drew. And now the center of all of the controversy, Jimmy Kimmel, and Carson Daly, also MTV, but it doesn't end there. This is already 30 years ago. These people have been working together. But it doesn't end there, okay? Adam Carolla has been good friends since at least 1995 with another person that maybe some of you have heard of. Kathy Griffin. So comedian Kathy Griffin has known Adam Carolla since at least 30 years ago, and Kathy Griffin has been a regular call-in on the show. Kathy Griffin has known Dr. Drew since at least 30 years ago. They were regularly on the show. Kathy Griffin has known Jimmy Kimmel since at least 30 years ago because of their collaboration. Kathy Griffin and Adam Carolla, 32 years ago, were co-hosts of the VH1 Music Awards. Kathy Griffin was famous for her controversy during that show for some, it was really no big deal kiss with Snoop Dogg, where I guess they did some more stuff in the back room or something like that. I don't know. I don't care. Okay. I mean, tell you, that was the weakest peck on the lips I've ever seen. So I don't know what all the controversy was about. Okay. No tongue, no nothing in that kiss. That was a weak kiss. Kathy Griffin, Adam Carolla, Dr. Drew, Jimmy Kimmel, and Carson Daly. And it doesn't end there because in the late 1990s, Adam Carolla who's also in this circle right here, needed to make some extra money. So he was a little bit more of a fitness buff then, okay? And you know who Adam Carolla got some money? He got some money training Joe Rogan for boxing. So Joe Rogan, Adam Carolla, Dr. Drew, Snoop Dogg, Kate Griffin, Carson Daly, Jimmy Kimmel, and probably a few more names. Oh, I think Roseanne Barr is in there too, because Roseanne Barr is a friend with all of these people as well since the mid-1990s, 30 years ago. Oh, that's right. Kathy Griffin got her big start in 1995 as far as a movie goes with having be as an extra actor on the movie, Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction, you know, that Quentin Tarantino movie, which earned an ungodly amount of money, which was funded by Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, 30 years later, is basically the face of the 25 years later anyways, face of the Me Too movement. What I'm trying to highlight is that isn't it strange that all of the superstars with respect to the extreme Trump derangement syndrome or the, hey, these guys may be okay, they kind of understand that wokeism isn't so great, people from Hollywood have effectively been a social circle for almost 30 years. 30 years. I just met my friend Ed, who 5 years later became the best man at my wedding back in 1994, 1995. And Joe Rogan is in this too. And then you have this man show, which is created on Comedy Central, which I don't think I ever once laughed at it. The Man Show, which portrays men or think it's cool if guys, you know, just like to sit around, drink beer, get beer bellies, and then, I don't know, whatever, watching women jump around on trampolines without bras on and short shorts. And, oh, this is what it's cool to be a guy. You just don't have a job and you drink beer and you like to watch women, attractive women, bounce their boobs around on trampolines. And I guess that's what guys are supposed to do. It never resonated with me. Like, I mean, yeah, I'm a guy. I mean, it's a hot girl on the trampoline. Don't get me wrong, but this is lame. Really? Really? I'm supposed to enjoy this crap? But that was Jimmy Kimmel. That was Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel and his co-host was Kathy Griffin and Dr. Drew, longtime friend, Adam Carolla on The Man Show. And when Jimmy Kimmel left to create the Jimmy Kimmel Show and do all of his controversy later on, of course, guess who filled his role? His vacancy was filled by Joe Rogan. This is almost the entire ecosystem. Roseanne Barr, what's that? Jane Stanshart or whatever his name, Stan something, I don't know. Who was the other Man Show guy? And Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla and Kathy Griffin and Snoop Dogg. When Trump derangement syndrome was booming in 2017, it's Kathy Griffin with the decapitated Trump head. And it's Snoop Dogg doing the video shooting a guy who's dressed up like Trump. It's all the Trump derangement syndrome in one basket. That somehow all of these people were working together 30 years ago. And as you have just identified in the chat, forever now captured, it's really unusual in a modern day America for people to have people that they have been friends with and even crazier still working with for 30 years. The entire pro-Trump, anti-Trump derangement circus. And then there's one more element that it ties a lot of it together, but not all of it, okay? Is a man named Stephen Bannon. Now, Stephen Bannon is now known as Mr. Populist Movement, and he wears this costume of this dirty, stained green coat, and he wears 3 pens on his collar, sort of like some lame-ass call-out to Nazis were cool or something. You know, I don't know. Why do you need 3 pens? Maybe one day have like 2 pens, as if you actually needed one of the pens. What's he doing? He wears the extra greasy hair, and it's a costume. Steve Bannon goes back to Goldman Sachs. And this is where it goes to the next level. Steve Bannon was a Goldman Sachs guy who started to become interested in advertising and the opportunities to invest in media throughout the 1990s. Okay, Stephen K. Bannon did. And I do have a page on Stephen K. Bannon that I can pop up. Let's see here. Go to the bees. It's not my best page, but I do have a lot of stuff there that did take quite a while to create. Stephen K. Bannon. There he is. Just looking fat and stubbly and everything else and greasy-haired. What I've heard is that Steve Bannon actually in the late 1990s and early 2000s dressed very metrosexual. His hair was shorter. He was clean-shaven. He would wear loafers without socks. He was a Goldman Sachs guy. His family is very Democrat and very pro-Kennedy. He comes from a very strong Christian family. He was in the Navy. Steve Bannon was. He had some role in military intelligence, Navy intelligence, I don't know. Did get some job in the White House back in the 70s or early 1980s, around his Goldman Sachs time. And then because of some, I guess, lucky investments he made in partnerships and the fact that he moved out to California, he started to invest in movie production, and he started to invest in movie syndication and stuff, and maybe early internet. And one of the winning moves that Steve Bannon made was making an investment in the 1990s in Seinfeld, the very, very famous, very profitable comedy starring Jerry Seinfeld. And Steve Bannon and his associates have made probably at least $100 million from their investments in Seinfeld. Probably hundreds of millions of dollars in total. It was just an enormous windfall, giving them a war chest which most of us can only dream about. Now, during and after his time with Seinfeld, you can imagine the people that he must have met. One of the more curious people who worked on Seinfeld, who almost no one seems to know works on Seinfeld, is a guy named Larry David. Now, this is Larry David. I don't know Larry David's full body of work, but I know him well enough. He has a distinctive look, you know, the way his baldness and nose and so on, and glasses and way of talking. Larry David is described as a comedian, and after Seinfeld, and he was an executive director or writer on Seinfeld. He was one of the bigwigs on Seinfeld, and he made a ton of money on Seinfeld too. Larry David went on to create a show called Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I think was on cable channels. I don't know if it was Showtime or HBO, one of those. And Larry David was the star of that show, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David is described as a stand-up comedian, writer, and also actor. I have never laughed at anything Larry David has ever done. I don't know why. It might speak to the fact that I'm just not a very smart person. Maybe I don't know what it is. I think Larry David is one of the least funny people to ever live. All right. I think staring at a piece of watching paint dry is funnier than him. He's just not funny. I don't get it. However, he is celebrated by many people, even people that I think are brilliant comedians like Louis C.K., as the gold standard of comedians. I don't get it. Obviously, there's something I'm missing. I don't know what it is. But regardless, he is heralded as one of the greatest comedians ever and writers. Larry David, as one of the key writers of Seinfeld, claims to have never met Steve Bannon, ever. An article came out in 2017 where he says he never met Steve Bannon, and Larry David is very left, just fine, okay? We're all Americans. We have different ideas. That's good. We're supposed to hash out our ideas. Very left, and has made so much money that I think he's almost a billionaire, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Let's put it this way. There's a certain level of wealth where it's way more than 10 million. It's once you get in hundreds of millions of dollars where as long as your money is invested appropriately, you can just spend 20 to 40 million dollars a year. And then at the end of the year, you'll look at your checking accounts or your investments, and you'll have the same amount there and maybe even a little bit more. All right? Unless you are incredibly irresponsible You can't spend it fast enough. It's breakaway wealth. All right? That's it. Once you reach that certain level, you win. Okay? Unless you really try hard, you won. You no longer have to worry about anything. Larry David is there, and Larry David is one of the top funders of the Democrat Party, and as well as, progressive movements. It's fine. That's his right. But he's definitely politically active and is also one of the most outspoken people speaking out against Donald Trump. He has a fanatical hatred. Could be an act for Donald Trump. Fine. It's odd that Steve Bannon has made hundreds of millions on Seinfeld, and one of the most important people of Seinfeld claims to have never met Steve Bannon in a 2017, I think it was either Wall Street Journal or New York Times article. How is that possible? How is that possible? The example I gave yesterday is sort of like, for those who know baseball years back, it's like Billy Martin of the Yankees saying that he never met Reggie Jackson, even though he's like the key home run person and won several World Series for him. Yeah, I heard of Reggie Jackson, and I know he got home runs and won games, but I guess he was around. I saw his jersey once in a while, but I never met him. It's not possible. So the fact that Larry David says that he never met Steve Bannon is particularly troubling to me because, and we're wrapping this back, okay? So that relationship should go back almost 30 years. 30 years, another 30-year relationship again that they deny. Both of them deny it. Isn't that odd? Because Larry David, when he was a star and on this Curb Your Enthusiasm show, his co-host, I should say the co-star on the Curb Your Enthusiasm show, let me see, I want to pop it up here. Okay. And his wife on the show was this woman here who is very beautiful but has had way too much cosmetic surgery. And that is named Cheryl Hines. And Cheryl Hines is the new wife of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., current director of Health and Human Services. And Cheryl Hines and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as you know, is a hero and almost considered to be godlike by Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon's show has almost had a singular purpose since at least 8-10 years ago to create the to support the ultimate rise of RFK Jr. and to send him into the presidency. So Steve Bannon is kind of this central person. If you go back here to the page about Steve Bannon here, and we're going to walk through that now with a little bit more detail here, scrolling through. Steve Bannon, you can see 1991, making a lot of money, working with different investment groups, including Talbot, Bannon and Company, Beverly Hills, working with Japanese companies. He was involved in this weird biosphere project. I don't know. I think too much is made out of that. 1996, you can find references littered throughout U.S. newspapers. And then in 2001, here he is speaking at this Benedictine Catholic military school. Very small, exclusive, very expensive Catholic militant school. Very pro-Vatican Catholic school. And I note the Vatican part because Steve Bannon is one of the leading people in the world in creating a populist or right-leaning faction in the Vatican. Steve Bannon goes to the Vatican a lot to do that. Steve Bannon knows popes somehow or another. It's this July 2002 article called The Firm. And it's about a Hollywood company, talent company called The Firm. Its founder is a Jeff Quantinetz. And The Firm is working with all kinds of other media companies and Hollywood actors, as well as sneaker companies. It does make references in here to one of the big investors, or I should say executives at this firm, and that's Steve Bannon. Amongst those companies and which are supported are various sneaker companies, which also have a lot of interest in Snoop Dogg. So you can start to see here that Steve Bannon's interests here, his Hollywood interests, his movie-making interests, and so on, are already crossing paths with people in that network that I just laid out for you. Continuing on, we find here, let's see, your Genius Products, February 2004, which was the one that I think is most interested to me here, is that we see, as of 2004, Steve Bannon is now showing his interest in making Hollywood propaganda, or I should say, Steve Bannon has identified a marketing opportunity, or I should say a market opportunity. Steve Bannon is a huge admirer of that Annie Riefenstahl, or whatever the heck her name was, one of the female propagandists who was very successful. Riefenstahl, during World War II Germany, was used oftentimes by Hitler as well as Himmler. And Steve Bannon is noting an opportunity to create a Michael Moore, someone like a Michael Moore, except for the political right in the United States. The political right in the United States is, for the most part, unrepresented. There's billionaires in the political right who just want low taxes. There's billionaires who want to, at the time in the 80s, people forget it was reversed in the 80s. There were Republican billionaires in the 80s that wanted open borders and wanted more immigration so that they could have more competition for labor markets. It was completely the opposite, at least I think, in the 1980s than it is right now. And there just really wasn't a whole lot of organization amongst people who were conservatives in the 80s and in the 1990s and early 2000s. And Steve Bannon came up with the opportunity to create a Michael Moore for the right. And Steve Bannon became the Michael Moore of the right. Started to look like an everyday person. He got rid of the loafers and the no socks look, and he put on the stained green coat, let his hair grow longer, let it stay greasy, and probably put on an extra 30 or 40 pounds. Steve Bannon put on the costume of the everyday, poor, upset white man in America and created this show of his. Someone who might have been in the way, I guess fortunately died mysteriously young and in a way no one quite understands, and that is Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart was in the way. Andrew Breitbart dies conveniently, totally clears the path for Steve Bannon to do a takeover of this side. But we see here, going all the way back, that Steve Bannon here is, let's see here, working with DVD, supporting as this new Michael Moore of the right, supporting Sarah Palin, trying to create this conservative movement, talking a lot of trash about Muslims and Islam wanting to take over the world with germs and nuclear weapons, etc., etc. But we see here, this is Forbes magazine, May 20th, 2005, Harvey Weinstein get Goldman Sachs financing. And we see here, Walt Disney Company, Miramax, Harvey Weinstein getting many, many billions thanks to Goldman Sachs. And what this article is also suggesting basically is that at this time of 2005, Harvey Weinstein, Walt Disney, Miramax, and when you're talking about Miramax, you're talking about Harvey Weinstein, now you're also talking about the network and the current support of Quentin Tarantino with Steve Bannon. So Steve Bannon is established right now with the Harvey Weinstein network and, by extension, Quentin Tarantino and people like Kathy Griffin, who's the only person who ever starred in a Quentin Tarantino movie who, one, both was dating and having sex with Quentin Tarantino, and two, was named personally as Kathy Griffin in the credits. Kathy Griffin as Kathy Griffin, and that is in the credits of Pulp Fiction from 1995. What I'm trying to show here is that Steve Bannon, although he wasn't in like Flynn with this group starting in the mid-1990s, by the early 2000s, he was. And Steve Bannon, with these connections with Harvey Weinstein, and Harvey Weinstein, oh, that's right, now you're talking about a social connection and a business connection to people like Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I'm not a Jeffrey Epstein researcher. What I know about Jeffrey Epstein and believe about Jeffrey Epstein is that he had some intel role. I believe he did some work for the United States Department of Justice as an agent. And I think Jeffrey Epstein also used connections to people like Harvey Weinstein to meet other people in Hollywood and make other business connections, and to not compromise people, but just to create a whole web of absolutely useless connections. Harvey Weinstein, someone says a story that Harvey Weinstein does things with kids, and then Harvey Weinstein goes from party to party to party, shaking hands and holding hugs and holding people to create a huge web of absolutely useless metadata. Invest $1 million here, $1 million there, and before you know it, everybody's connected to Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein is connected to everybody. And you can write books like what Whitney Webb writes. Epstein created such a useless web of metadata. It's sort of like saying that everyone is connected to everyone else because we all live on Earth and have lungs. It's useless metadata. His job was to create crap metadata to make it impossible to tell who's who. And I bring up the topic of Jeffrey Epstein here with a lot of passion because it is impossible to overlook that it was in 2018 or so. Scroll down here because I have so much freaking evidence, okay? It was in 2018. Where is it? Got to keep going down here. 2018, 2019. I'm going to find it. I guess I don't have it called out here specifically. But I do have the video saved somewhere. Steve Bannon was the last person to interview Jeffrey Epstein. Steve Bannon, Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein. Steve Bannon supposedly has 30 to 40 hours of unreleased interviews with Jeffrey Epstein. And everybody's connected to everyone else because of Epstein, and Trump because of Epstein, and this because of Epstein, and that because of Epstein. Epstein is a wonderful card to play because you can create any narrative you want to out of it at any time. As a matter of fact, if you happen to have Hollywood connections and enough video of Jeffrey Epstein, you are now in the perfect position to create new Jeffrey Epstein videos and suggest that they already existed from the past. Bannon is uniquely capable of doing that and fabricating evidence at any time. It would be even crazier if Jeffrey Epstein was still alive, because that would mean Jeffrey Epstein would just need to play out a part. He would have the same body motions, and then just using a little bit of computer work, you can make him look like Jeffrey Epstein was actually shaking hands with the president of Israel 10 years ago saying, ha, 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 we should make Charlie Kirk a popular person and then kill him on television and then get everyone mad about Israel. You can do stuff like that if you're Steve Bannon. You can do stuff like that if you have relationships that go back 30 years. And if you look at all of the Trump derangement, it seems to be all built or spoken out against by networks that go back 20 to 30 years. And Steve Bannon's connection with Seinfeld does go back actually 30 years right now. 30 years in the making. 30 years. And I think Steve Bannon, I'm not saying he's the kingmaker. What I am saying, though, is that he's in the right place at the right time. It's also Steve Bannon and his friend and constant associate, what's his name, Kyle Bass. Kyle Bass told the world before anyone else that China had a spy that was arrested in Canada in 2019 for smuggling Ebola back and forth. Steve Bannon was the first person to have a podcast about the coronavirus. Steve Bannon Associates, several of them, are on the short list of early COVID survivors, including people like Milo Yiannopoulos. Steve Bannon was hosting Stephen Hatfill, who wrote a book called 3 Seconds to Midnight, released on November 1st, 2019, referencing at least 20 people who wound up being involved in the pandemic, including at least 18 references to Peter Daszak. Steve Bannon is a central person involved in controlling, or at least helping pull off, all of this orchestration and all of these operations, and they involve a network of people that go back 25 and more precisely 30 years right now. And the last thing I was at is that it's not limited to just the actors involved in the Trump derangement syndrome. Steve Bannon, by the way, also seems to really, really love Robert Malone. Robert Malone, as a scientist, let's look back at Robert Malone 30 years ago, okay? There's one event involving Robert Malone, an HIV/AIDS conference, which was put on, I think, back in 1994, 1995. Let me find the page here. Malone, Robert Wallace Malone, Malone. And let's see, Redford. No, excuse me. Control F. Here we go. 1996, September, annual virology conference in Baltimore, Maryland. Here we are, 1996. Robert Malone presenting on a track with Deborah Birx and Robert Redfield. How is it possible that the two people that are on the stage regarding with Anthony Fauci in the beginning of 2020 for a pandemic that I guess was announced by, of all people, Steve Bannon and his associates such as Kyle Bass being out of China, and Steve Bannon also telling us that it definitely was from China because of the whistleblower that he flew in named Li Mengyan. Robert Malone is co-presenting with Deborah Birx and Robert Redfield on that day, on the same track where that morning it was Jerome Kim, who I think might be the same guy as with Inovio, as well as Flossie Wongstall, who was the mistress of Bob Gallo. And Bob Gallo, remember, Bob Gallo announced the HIV vaccine. It was printed in the columns on the front page or on the front of the business page on many U.S. newspapers on the morning of September 11th, 2001, as well as Gary Nabel. And Gary Nabel, oh, that's right, he did a lot of work all the way back in 2001 with Vical Corporation DNA plasmids, patents owned by Robert Malone. And as the book Big Shot AIDS Vaccine shows, Robert Malone has known a scientist who has been at Oregon for a long time named Nancy Hagwood. Robert Malone met this scientist in 1989. Nancy Hagwood went on to become the third most frequent co-author of Robert Malone's postdoc advisor, Murray Gardner, meaning that somehow or another, Robert Malone, the hero currently working for RFK Jr., has known the person that went to the FBI and said that Bruce Ivins was individually responsible for the anthrax letters since 1989. 12 years before 9/11. 14 years before she was on a PBS documentary with Anthony Fauci. And 18 years before she actually did go to the FBI to say it was Bruce Ivins. How is that possible? How is that possible? Unless these long-term networks are proof that most of what we are seeing right now is a script. It is a script. It is a script. It is a script. I don't understand who's writing it, but it's not organic. And this all goes back. It is not possible that one day Jimmy Kimmel just decided to speak off the cuff one day and say things which were a little, I mean, you know, I don't see what he gained from it. It was stupid what he said. It's definitely personally infuriating how he just passes off the significance of the flag half-staff thing. But those comments didn't just sneak through. It's not like he's on a podcast like I am right now where he can just say something accidentally or just talk about his true feelings about something and it's not being censored. His statements were reviewed, they were approved, they were recorded, and they were rebroadcasted. All of them. That all happened. Dozens of people signed off on it. Which means it's a script. And it's Jimmy Kimmel. If it was somebody else, no one would have cared. Maybe they would have gotten a little bit of flack for it. But I think it's Jimmy Kimmel because Jimmy Kimmel is very close and very cozy to a network which has been established a long time ago. And I think amongst a very small group of people, when you get Jimmy Kimmel and Kathy Griffin and Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew and Joe Rogan, maybe Quentin Tarantino from time to time, Steve Bannon, a few other people, who else? Roseanne Barr. They all laugh at how they can create this type of drama and get people whipped up to the point where families will no longer even talk to each other anymore. That is the type of control late night comedians and podcasters have in the United States of America right now. Most people don't even know what their local state representatives or their local their U.S. congresspersons or senators have said today in Congress. How many of you know what your U.S. congressperson said today in Congress, or your elected one or two U.S. senators said today in Congress? I bet most of you, you know what? I don't even know what mine said. What I know are what people said on podcasts. Because as Jonathan Cooey has said, and as Dan Cohen has reiterated, we right now are being ruled by podcasters and entertainers and comedians. And I think Steve Bannon, love him or hate him, had the foresight to understand that's the direction we are going. That's the direction we are going right now. So, to review, this is not an accident. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was planned. It was planned, and it must have been planned because there's no way after 30 plus years, with all of the other people who are in the key positions of being the pro-Trump, anti-Trump, or whatever, it just happened like that. Sorry. It's all part of a script. And the more you realize it's been part of a script and that it's been ongoing now for 30 years, you may initially be mad. But I promise you, when you think about it, you're going to relax. You are going to get cooler, and you're going to go, you know what? If it took them 30 years to get here, hell, there's nothing I can say or think that's going to change anything tonight. And that's true. There's nothing you can do about this or I can do about it today other than to remind yourself, disconnect, spend the time with your family. If you got a kid or a grandkid over right now, listen to me later, okay? Go back to the beginning later on. You don't need to listen to it. It's taken decades to get to this point. And at some point, the podcasters need to be turned off. I don't care what they say anymore. People shouldn't care. What are our elected officials saying? What should they be saying? So that's 1 hour, an hour and 4 minutes in. Thank you guys for listening. I think today came out much better than the show did the other day. Have a great, beautiful, blessed day. I love you very much. Stay positive, stay cool, and I'll do another show tomorrow. Love you tomorrow. Take care, everyone. God bless.